Ata Maria Year 11s, it's Ms McIntosh here. So I'm just going to do a little video just on what market equilibrium is, just because I did one about excess demand and supply, and I just want to go back to the basics. So just with the basics of market equilibrium, a market is, you might remember, it's at any place or situation that buyers and sellers come together to exchange goods and services. And so that really encapsulates a lot of different markets. So it could be the money market, could be the job market, could be the property market, could just be you going down to the canteen. But it's anywhere that someone who's selling a product comes together with the consumer, and it could be online, could be over the phone, and they exchange goods and services. And usually that happens with money, with a price. So there are two sides to it. It's kind of like a battle, really. Back in the old days, it used to be a battle. You might do some haggling. Some of you might have done that on some trips overseas, or gone to like an informal market where you try and negotiate the price. So that's how markets developed. And now we kind of like have a standard where you go into a shop and they have like prices, and that's like an invitation for you to buy the product at that price. And when you go up to the till, you're like, yeah, I agree to pay this price. But going back to the basics, there's two sides. You've got the buyers, who are your consumers, and they follow the law of demand. And basically, the key thing we're sort of pointing out here is that they've got an opposite viewpoint to the sellers, and that consumers don't really want to pay that much. They'd like to get a bargain. So they'd like to pay as little as possible. And therefore, when the price goes up, their quantity of money goes down because it becomes relatively less affordable. And so the vice versa is true, that when the price decreases, it's now a lot more affordable, so their quantity demand will increase. And this, of course, assumes ceteris paribus, where you are ignoring quite a lot of other factors that might also influence their buying behaviours, but we're just talking about price. On the other hand, you have the sellers. So this is anyone who's selling the product to the consumers. We call them producers, firms, same thing, that sector of the economy. And they're selling the product. They're thinking about two things. They need to cover their costs. So you at least you've got to get a price that covers your costs. So if you don't get a price that covers your costs, well, you're not even going to supply it at all. And then they're thinking about their incentives, like I put all this time and effort into the business, I need to cover my costs, but what about my time? I could be working in a day job. So they want to receive something called profit. And what you can see is that when the price goes up, and I know, we just remember they haven't met the consumers yet. This is just kind of like what they're thinking, what they'd like to happen. So the sellers are thinking, well, if that price goes up, I can cover those costs a lot more easier, and that would mean that I get more profit theoretically. If I was to sell them all, I could get a lot more profit, because that difference between my price and my cost of producing each unit will increase. So it's more profitable as the price goes up. And that's why we have the law of supply. As price increases, the quantity supplied increases, vice versa, ceteris paribus. Because again, there are other things that would influence the sellers in terms of what they're willing and able to supply. And we're only looking at the price. So they're like different opposing sides. Consumers want to pay less, whereas producers want as much like higher price as possible. Can they come together? Yeah, they can. So I just got a little schedule here. Now, what we're looking at, because it's market equilibrium, is this is the market quantity demanded and the market quantity supplied. This is, and when you look at demand and supply individually, you're just literally looking at one person, one consumer, one seller, and usually some lame examples like Sally's golf barn, that type of thing. But no, in the market, you're literally looking at any consumer, so anyone who's in the market to buy the product and anyone who's in the market to sell the product. So this could be just a few people, a few buyers, a few sellers, or it could actually be heaps of sellers and heaps of consumers. So, it could be even infinite, but, usually, we could be talking about several shops here, and, the local village or community are the consumers. And so when you do that, you have, say, the set prices. I love pies, so this is why it's pies. You got the set price on offer for pies, and then you're going to go ask all the different consumers how many they're prepared to buy at each price. And so you have to add up the individual quantity demanded at each price to get the market. And it's the same for the sellers. Different shops will have different costs and different motivations. So what they're prepared to offer, their quantity supplied, could be quite different at each price. To get the market total, you have to horizontally sum up the individual quantity supplied at each price. And that's how we get the market demand and the market supply. And then you plot it together, and basically you're looking for that point where they can agree. And you can see here that's at $3, there's 7. It's a pretty basic example. So here's what it looks like. All right, you plot it together. Now, just some pointers. Okay, the market, you've got to have a title. There should be like a time, like market for pies, weekly, monthly. So look for that. You do need to label axes. Price, there needs to be units, dollar sign. Quantity, if it was like packets of pie, stuff like that, we'd need to have that in brackets. If it was not actually like 1, it was like 10,000, then you need to have the extra zeros in brackets here as well. So these are called graphing conventions. You do need to have them: title, axes labeled, units. If you look here, the scale needs to be even. So for example, you can't start at 0 and then go 2, 3, 4, 5, because that's not going up in even intervals. If you are struggling with that and you want to start from an uneven number, then if you put 2 lines through the start of the vertical axis here, or you could do it for horizontal as well, that's called breaking the scale. And I recommend that if you've got some interesting numbers and you need to start from an uneven one, right? But you do need to have even intervals. There also needs to be even spacing. So the space between each of these numbers needs to be the same. Same for your horizontal. The spacing here needs to be even as well. So even intervals and spacing. You need to have plotted your points. Right, there's no little dots here, but you need to plot the points. Some of you like to do X's. That's a bit weird, but if it makes you happy, fine. But do join them and put an S on the end. Same for demand. Join the dots or your crosses and put a D. Okay, so fully label everything, and then make sure that you label the equilibrium, which is PE and QE. Okay, so the idea is that where supply equals demand, or the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied, it's a little bit off here, that should be here, okay, then you have what's called equilibrium, because there's nothing left like unsold, and those who are willing and able to pay the price of $3 will get their pies. So that's why it's called equilibrium. There's no excess demand or excess supply. And just quickly to finish off, because I have done a bit on excess demand and supply, what does that look like? Excess demand is just literally where the price in the market is too low, and there could be a number of reasons why that is. It might be a temporary situation, so it could be a fall in demand or an increase in supply. I'll cover that in a later video. But the price is too low, and so that means that the quantity demanded increases because the prices drop, but the quantity supplied decreases, and you have a shortage, also known as excess demand. All right, the opposite situation is excess supply, and that's where the price is too high. So again, it's because a temporary situation where the market supply has changed, or the market demand, probably supply has decreased, or there's too much demand. Oh, sorry, too little demand, what am I saying? And you have a situation where the price is too high, it's above the equilibrium, QS is increased, QD is decreased, and you have what's called a surplus. All right, and kind of what's pointing out here is basically if you have a shortage, the price has got to fall. All right, sorry, what am I saying? If you've got a shortage, the price is going to go up. All right, it'll be bid up. People who really want it will get it. And then the opposite is true for a surplus. When you've got too much stock on offer and no one's buying it, you need to drop the price, even if you don't want to. Okay, so there's a little quick rundown of market equilibrium. All right, just remember with the graphing, if you will have to graph probably data, I'm strongly thinking you will, then you need to make sure you label everything. It does actually count, and you can just lose points in terms of if you miss some of those labels or some of those graphing conventions. Ka kite anō.